everyone, it's Mithrilda and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. So due to an unexpected amount of free time, I was able to finish 2 paintings last week and finish Evolve Artist Block 2. I feel like it's definitely been a fight to find enough time to complete my homeworks, and I've also run into a lot of obstacles while completing the homework assignments themselves. But in the end, I feel really proud and happy of all the progress I've made. And I am so excited to get started working with color. So Homework 19 is a commission for my friend who wanted to support me on my learning and art school dreams. I felt like it was very important to make something I would be proud to have my friend hang up in his house, that I would feel like was worth the money. This is probably the most high-stakes artwork I've ever worked on. It's interesting. I always thought I would never ever do commissions because the thought of not being able to produce after taking someone's money was so scary. First of all, I didn't have the skill to make anything pretty enough for someone to want. And second of all, I could make something halfway decent in maybe 1 in every 20 attempts at drawing something, but I didn't know which attempt it would be. Making something pretty felt more like a game of chance than something I'd be able to just do. And the fact that there are people out there offering their skills up and being sure that they can draw pretty much anything in their area of expertise, that sounded like some sort of magic. However, after doing Evolve and gaining skills, and with those skills, confidence, I feel like a whole different person. Someone who really can paint anything of a certain complexity or less, and if I keep going on my path, I'll really be able to paint anything in the world. I feel like I get it now, how people can take requests and just whip out something. Now when I see something, I can immediately think of all the steps it'll take to draw it, separate it into values, and paint it. Art doesn't seem like something magical that people just poof from their minds anymore. Now every subject is a math problem, and I know every step to solve it. Okay, maybe that's the actuary in me speaking. So because I wanted this painting to be perfect, and because the subject matter was a bit more complicated than what I've been used to, I adjusted the sketch on the paper first, and then I used the tracing paper to get it onto the canvas. I'm not sure if that's really allowed, but I figured that since erasing and drawing precise lines on the canvas was so difficult, and that I feel like I've gotten a lot of proportional drawing practice just drawing it over and over again on the paper, that making myself draw it again onto the canvas would be an unnecessary difficulty. With this commission, I feel like I understand a bit more the things I've heard pros say, like how when you're making something for a client, nobody cares what methods you use as long as you get the result that they want. I know that this is like the lowest stakes situation ever, making a painting for my friend, and that meant taking a shortcut by tracing it onto the canvas rather than drawing it. But in doing this, the client gets a better painting and I feel better about my drawing. It takes less time overall, win-win-win. Well, I guess there is a downside, which is what I've also heard people say, and that's when you do client work, you retreat into your comfort zone, and you explore and you learn less. For the throwaway homeworks, I did all sorts of wacky things just to try it and see what it would look like. For this one, I found myself being safer, slower, sticking to exactly what I knew would work out best. And in the end, I feel like I made a much more high-quality painting, but I stayed closer inside of my comfort zone than usual. However, my comfort zone is pretty huge now compared to 10 paintings ago because of all the explorations I've been doing. I feel like slowing down and really dialing up everything to 100 is probably a fine thing to do every once in a while just to see how far you've come. Oh yeah, and since this is a commission, I think it would be fun to make a video about how to varnish it and pack it for shipping. I've asked Kevin lots and lots of questions about how to do it. The video would take a while though because these paintings take forever to dry. So after talking to Kevin a few days ago, I wonder if my thinking might be a bit backward when it came to me getting the drawing perfect on the paper and then tracing it onto the canvas. He said that he noticed in my videos how I was drawing the same thing over and over and taking so many measurements before I finally got it onto the canvas. And he wondered if I might be able to get away from even doing the measuring at all and just doing a sketch in paint straight onto the canvas from observation. And I think this also ties into Dennis C. Nolasco's question to me where he asked, so how do you feel about your observational drawing skills now? Would you be confident in doing a live drawing session with a model? And the answer is no. I don't feel very confident in my observational drawing skills at all, especially without using the measurement technique, and that stuff is still way out of my comfort zone. And I believe that the reason for that is because I haven't practiced using this skill at all, of drawing from observation without the measurements and the proportions. Kevin says he believes that I have the ability now. I just need to get practice with moving away from the rigid measuring process. And looking at my own artworks, I feel like if I saw someone else produce the same stuff, then I'd think they'd have some pretty good observational skills. But living inside my own brain and having been there for the creation of all these artworks, I'm scared and I'm not sure if I have it in me. This may sound silly, but I feel like I've made it through every homework so far just by the skin of my teeth, and that every one is just like a crazy fluke. Well, at least the drawing part. For some reason, I feel pretty solid on the painting and rendering part. Anyway, so this sounds like textbook imposter syndrome, but even saying that aloud makes me feel really conceited about my skills. I don't know. I don't know if those observational skills are there inside of me, if they can stand alone without the whole proportional measuring technique propping them up. Personally, I'm leaning toward the I need more practice, I'm not ready. Every time I try to draw something, it comes out terribly, and I can't make anything half decent without going through this long-ass measurement proportion process. On the other hand, if Kevin says so, who am I to disagree? As someone without the skills who hasn't worked with hundreds of students, maybe I should just let him decide rather than my feelings, which have proven to be pretty unreliable at judging my own skills. So he had suggested that I do my next homework without measuring it out first, just blocking out the shapes from observation on the canvas. But by the time we had this conversation, I had already finished drawing my next homework onto the canvas. And what I remember is that this drawing was so hard for me. I sat down pretty happy, woo, this is my last painting. I just need to get this done and I'll be done with block 2. And I was in a good mood. The longer I sat there trying to take measurements and realizing that when I drew the drawing with my measurements, it didn't look right, and trying to figure out where those problems were, I wanted to give up on this subject 3 or 4 times. But if I'm being honest, I was more afraid of having to find a new subject than I was of failing on this one, so I just kept on pushing through. So in the end, I sort of gave up on measuring. I used the best measurements I had and put them on the canvas, and then I just used my eyes and said that looks too thick, that looks too high, that looks too low, and just nudged everything around until it kind of looked right. And I was able to get it to a point where I was pretty happy with how it was going. I remember a few weeks ago, I asked Kevin, what do I do if I can't get the proportional measuring technique down? Sometimes no matter how much I measure, it doesn't line up with what I feel like it looks like at all. And he said, maybe don't worry so much about learning and mastering the technique, because we're not here to be really good at measuring. And if you can tell what looks right and what looks off, then maybe you don't need to think so much about how the measuring technique is going in particular. Because in the end, we're trying to move away from using the measuring technique at all. So I guess here I am, already moving away from relying solely on the numbers. The perfectionist in me wants to figure out why the measurements weren't coming out properly and figure out if I can improve my technique to do it next time. But the person who works a full-time job and just wants to improve her skills as quickly as possible realizes that that's the wrong question to be asking. In the end, did I make a satisfactory painting? Yes. Now we are moving on. Because in the end, none of this was to perfect my proportional drawing measurement skills. It was to improve my observation, and if I was able to make the painting, that says something about those observation skills. Right? I think so. Anyway, and with that, my journey through Block 2 of Evolve Artist has concluded. Homework 19 took me exactly 8 hours, and homework 20 took me 5 hours and 44 minutes. The entirety of Block 2 took me 68 hours over the course of 4 months. It took me about half as many hours to do Block 2 as Block 1, but about over the same number of months. Next up, I'll be unboxing my Blocks 3 and 4 supply boxes and getting started with the color part of the curriculum. Also, I'll check in with how drawing without the measuring technique goes. So definitely subscribe if you want to hear more about how I progress with Evolve Artist. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy out there, and remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work!